Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Aeolian Talks for Wards 13 and 14. Tonight, we will meet some of the candidates running for City Council. We'll get to know who they are, what they stand for, and we get to ask them some tough questions, which is the really fun part. My name is Christine Teleski, and I'm honored to be your host this evening. I want to start by thanking the Aeolian Hall and Andrew for organizing and hosting these events. I really do want to thank all the candidates for being here to answer your questions, and I want to thank you for coming out and getting engaged in the political process here in London. Thank you for taking the time. Tonight we'll be hearing from the candidates in Ward 13 and 14, as I said. So let's meet them now. So everyone can just give a little wave when I call out your name and your ward. Starting the far side there, we have Allan Tipping for Ward 14, Annette Swalwell for Ward 14, Rod Morley for Ward 13, John Fife Miller for Ward 13, Kevin Wilbee for Ward 13, Ben Benedict for Ward 13, and then moving to the back row, David Lundquist for Ward 13, Jared Zafman for Ward 14, Gil Warren for Ward 13, Ariel Kayabaga for Ward 13. As Andrew mentioned, Jonathan Hughes, who's running for Ward 13, is en route, and Steve Hillier for Ward 14. So welcome, everyone. Without further ado, we will start our opening statements. We will start with Allan Tipping for Ward 14.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. This is my second term running for the council, second time running. I just need to let you know, I grew up in London, in Ward 14 for my complete life. I grew up there, I played there, and I still reside there. I'm a member of two local PLC committees, which are public liaison committees. One is with Org World, one is with Stormfisher. A lot of you have probably seen me on the news or in the radio. I've been there quite often fighting the odor that drifts over Ward 14 that destroys our property values and our way of life. I'm also on the advisory committee for the environment for the City of London, and I am not a free spender. I do not believe in just all these little frivolous sales that they do at City Hall. I support better City Hall, so which I mean by is faster building permits, faster renovation permits. Let's get stuff moving. Let's get this city alive. I know a company that just spent 2 years in permitting, and I know a residence that just spent 3 in permitting. I'm a supporter of the Housing First initiative, which is used in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and it's also used in the rest of Alberta now. I'm a dedicated person. I work hard at what I do, and I put out action, not just words.
Thank you, Allan. Sorry, that is 1 minute. Thank you so much. Next is Annette Swalwell, also for Ward 14.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us here today. I have just recently left a position, a 29-year position as a senior business analyst with the London Police Service. I left this position because I'm interested in serving my community. I have lived in Ward 14 for 14 years and have been in London since I was 16 years old. In the last few weeks, I attended a two-day leadership conference. And in that leadership conference, something really stuck with me. And it said that good leaders use their influence to empower and inspire people around them, to lift people up, and to bring them to their full potential. And that is the job of a good leader. So I started thinking, how does this look in the political community? And how would I implement this? Well, for me, giving everybody a voice, regardless of where they live, what their income is, what housing they have, or whether or not they have a house, everybody should have the same voice, and that voice should be heard with the same amount of weight as everybody else's. And only once we understand what people are going through can we truly lead them and help them to be empowered and inspired by what we are doing for them.
Okay, thank you, Annette. Rod Morley for Ward 13.
I'd like to give thanks to the Aeolian Hall and for Rogers to be televising this, and to also thank you for coming out as well. My name is Rod Morley. I've lived in London most of my life, and I've lived in many parts of the city over the years. I consider myself a white middle-aged man who has benefited greatly from the system that we live under. I realize now that it's my turn to use everything I've learned and gained to give back to the community and to use my knowledge and experience to give to others who may not have had the same benefits I have had, and to help them achieve and gain more. I want to make London a vibrant city with many new opportunities for Londoners to grow in many ways. I have a business background, running my own company for 5 years and still doing some freelance business consulting. But I think one of my greatest strengths is thinking differently. We cannot solve the problems of the future with the ideas of the past. I want to make downtown London the destination area of this city again. We must all work together to make the downtown core a safer place for all to come to. That will be my goal and focus for the next 4 years.
Thank you, Rod. John Fife Miller for Ward 13.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. My name is John Fife Miller, and I am a lifelong Londoner. I want to thank the Aeolian, Rogers TV, and congratulate all candidates for putting their names forward to represent their wards. As we grow together as the largest urban center in southwestern Ontario, we have to admit that there are challenges that require a better focus. Unemployment, poverty, and drug addiction are hammering our region, and particularly profound in Ward 13 neighborhoods. These have a direct effect on our safety, housing, petty crime, and an overall better understanding of what is acceptable and what is not. Solutions to these hardships will come from groups working together, not building walls. It will include a better understanding with surrounding communities and all levels of government. It will come from safe, secure housing for families who require it. It will come from leaders who will change course when necessary to meet the needs of Londoners. Most importantly, it comes from politicians replacing personal pride with civic pride. We can do better. Let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Kevin Wilbee for Ward 13.
Hello, my name is Kevin Wilbee. Thank you for coming tonight. I'm a resident on Talbot Street, and I'm a lawyer at the law firm Cram & Associates on Queens Avenue downtown. I'm running in Ward 13 because downtown is an important part of the city that affects all of us. As I engage with residents and listen to what is important to you and our community, some of the priorities include prioritizing downtown revitalization to make the downtown safe and fun place, to reduce seemingly vacant buildings in the downtown, working with other levels of government and organizations in the city to address the lack of housing, unaffordable rent, homelessness, mental health, and drug addiction. In addition to being a lawyer, I have 4 years' experience as an elected municipal councillor in Huron East, north of London, which has allowed me to develop a skill set and foundational understanding of how a municipality works, as well as the roles and responsibilities of council. I am the candidate who is well suited and ready for the job. I will ensure good decision-making and meaningful results in our community. On October 22nd, I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Kevin. Ben Benedict for Ward 13.
Welcome and thank you for your time. I'm Ben Benedict and I stand before you as your full-time candidate from Ward 13 for the City of London. I'm running based on my extensive leadership experience and long-standing service to London, Southwestern Ontario. If you support our troops, then as a veteran, Canadian Forces Special Forces medic, vote Ben Benedict. If you or your children have ever been a Boy Scout or a Girl Guide, then as a former Troop Scouter and Assistant District Commissioner, vote Ben Benedict. Personal successes include business leadership as a small public relations and communications business owner, being recognized as a mid-career professional artist, and earning a Master's of Arts in Communications degree in 2017. As a nonprofit leader, I designed the Pillar of Innovation Awards and co-founded Pride London Festival, including development of the Community Directory and the Rainbow Youth Leadership Bursary at the London Community Foundation. Politically, I served 3 years on Western Student Council, served on the Culture and Communications Committee in Sarnia-Lambton, and as a library board member, and helped write London's Cultural Master Plan as a Creative City Committee member. If you support nonprofits and local culture, vote Ben Benedict. As I hope you will see throughout tonight's responses, Ward 13
Thank you, Ben.
has...
Sorry, I'll have to cut you off there. Thank you.
It's okay, thank you.
And for Ward 13 as well, David Lundquist.
Good evening. My name is David Lundquist, and tonight I'm excited to tell you what I want to accomplish as a councillor in Ward 13. First of all, I want to deal with social housing and the affordability issues in London, particularly with older people and younger people. I also want to turn London Middlesex Housing Corporation into a modern institution and take it away from where it is right now, which is an institution crumbling at the seams. I want to address increasing tax burdens that are happening because of rising property values. I want community planning that involves evidence-based decisions. I want to fix London Transit in the first 365 days and make it so that outdated routes that no longer serve Londoners are reassigned to more productive routes. I want to properly support addiction outreach for London's hardest hit in our drug addiction crisis. This means actually funding it with more money than has been proposed in the current funding plan. I want to change the bylaws to protect our cultural heritage of our properties. I want to develop and work with all three levels of government to ensure that London gets commuter rail that's fast and efficient to the GTA as soon as possible.
Thanks, David.
Thank you very much.
For Ward 14, Jared Zafman.
Thank you, everybody. It's truly been an honor and a privilege for the last 4 years to be able to have served as the councillor for Ward 14 here in London. Over those 4 years, I have been able to directly assist getting residents' issues dealt with on countless occasions. When I was elected, I brought to council a great deal of experience through my work in real estate development through my family's business, through my work in municipal governments, and my master's degree, which focused on municipal administration. That experience has only grown over the last 4 years and has allowed me to successfully go to bat for Ward 14 in our community many, many times over. Just a quick couple examples: new accessible pathways for people with mobility issues in the Westminster Ponds, an area they could not previously access. As well, working with different constituents on issues of winter maintenance, making sure our paths are cleared so that kids can get to school safely. I hope to be able to have this tremendous privilege and honor for another 4 years with your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. For Ward 13, Gil Warren.
Good evening, and thank you for coming out. Just before I start, it was mentioned that Tom Cease has died, and things have come full circle for me tonight because when I was a guy in his 20s, I actually canvassed for Tom Cease when he was running for City Council, so it's sad to see that he has died. In terms of the Ward 13 campaign, I'm an experienced leader, and I've been involved in many community organizations. We're going to talk about the issues a little bit later, but I want to bring you some biographical material in case you're not familiar. I am the Heritage Chair of the Woodfield Community Association. That means I'm also on the executive of the Woodfield Community Association, which is the biggest and best organized community association in Ward 13. I'm also the volunteer treasurer for the Tolpuddle Housing and Office Cooperative, and I have done that for 15 years. I'm a founding board member of the Tolpuddle Housing and Office Co-op as well. I'm also a founding member of the Thames River Ecological Association.
Thank you, Gil. Sorry,
right,
that is your time to introduce. Thank you. For Ward 13, Ariel Kayabaga.
I'm honored to be here tonight. You and I both know that my presence on this stage is very unusual. I came to London as a refugee, and like many of you, this is the city that has raised me to be a proud Londoner. I learned to speak English here, and this is where my passion for politics was developed. When I was 14 years old, I got the opportunity to volunteer for a woman who was running in politics, and since then, I've had the opportunity to be part of a mentorship program at City Hall. I have served my country at Parliament Hill and Caucus Services, and I'm a political science graduate. But for the last 4 months, I've knocked on your doors and I've heard you. You care about the most vulnerable people in our community and you want to help them. You want to see a strong economy that fosters jobs in our community, and you want to see a revitalized downtown. That's why I care about building a city. That the girl I met the other day at the concert in Piccadilly neighborhood, who her mother came up to me and told me that she was so excited to see women running in politics, can be proud and inspired by. I want to build a city that my son Noah can grow up in, work in, and feel welcome and included in. My name is Ariel Kayabaga. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. For Ward 13, Jonathan Hughes.
I always do. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Hughes, and I want to be your Ward 13 councillor. I love London, and I think with my passion and your support, we can build a better city. I've lived and worked in many cities, large and small, and I can bring that experience to London. I'm a university lecturer helping people understand how to manage change and how to deliver leadership. I can bring strong leadership for Ward 13. I've worked with so many companies. I run my own small business. I help some of the biggest companies in the world resolve conflicts, create visions, and figure out the strategic plan of how to get there. And I believe that that's what we need at City Council. I'm socially progressive, but I'm also fiscally responsible. I'm a union negotiator. I'm a housing activist. I think all these things together, with your support, we can really do something different. On October the 22nd, I ask you to mark Jonathan Hughes as your first choice. Let's move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And for Ward 14, Steve Hillier.
Good evening. I'm Steve Hillier, and I'm running for the Ward 14 councillor position. I've lived in London for 52 years and in Ward 14 for the last 24. I'm happily married with 2 adult sons. My family and I have run numerous successful businesses, and personally, I have supported local business through mentoring and business development. I was a founding vendor at the Western Fair Farmers Market. Many of you may remember me. I was the butter tart, brownie, and cookie man for years. I know I've fed many of you in the audience. Priorities I will work on in Ward 14 Council include develop a transit plan that works for all Londoners and local businesses, attract real jobs, investment, and get London working again, reduce the increasing cycle of replacement, including our constant road repairs, and restore integrity at City Hall, respect the taxpayers, and provide a sustainable government. Having succeeded in so many areas of my life, I now feel I have the time to give the residents of Ward 14 the representation they so richly deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for your opening statements. We're going to jump right into the issues now, and we'll start with the big one, the elephant in the room, probably the most controversial topic for this City Council and for the coming council, BRT. This is the largest project in London's history. It's pegged at about $500 million. And there are going to be major decisions needing to be made. It's going to be a pivotal issue in this election. So we're going to start with a question for candidates. Do you support BRT? Why or why not? And if not, do you propose an alternative? And we'll be starting this time with Annette Swalwell for Ward 14.
Interestingly enough, it is not the number one question I am asked when I knock on doors in Ward 14. However, I do not, I don't believe that this is the transportation model that we need to work on. BRT at $500 million price tag. Anybody who has done any kind of project management knows that at the beginning of a 10-year project that costs that much money, your cost overruns are going to be astronomical. Although this $500 million has the city and the province and the feds have covered that money, London taxpayers are going to be the ones who are going to have to cover the cost of the overruns that are definitely going to happen on a $500 million project. I also believe that any transportation model that we implement is going to have to first and foremost get people where they need to go when they need to be there. I know that my children both started Fanshawe. We live in Summerside, and it will take them an hour or more to get to Fanshawe from where we are, and I don't see that changing from looking at the BRT model. I talked to a gentleman whose son goes to Western, and it takes him 2 hours by bus to get to Western. I really think we need to talk to the stakeholders, the people who are taking the bus. How can we improve the system for them? How can we get new people on the buses? We need to get buses out to the industrial areas. We need to service people who are shift workers, who work later in the day or start early in the day. We just need to start at the basics and get more people riding the bus and then build our phenomenal transit system from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. For Ward 13, Rod Morley.
I have been involved with this issue since 2004, when the City of London Transportation Master Plan was first initiated. I've been an active supporter of improved mass transit in the city, something I must say has been woefully underfunded for decades. I support the London Plan. A city has a right to steer the growth of the city. The BRT fits the plan and feeds into the London Plan, and for that I support it. The BRT, however, does not go far enough, and I will be bringing out my own vision of extending London Transportation's network in the coming weeks. Some people in London have been critical of the costs of the plan. I submit that there will be additional tax money spent on the upkeep of these roadways anyway if the BRT is stopped. At least with the plan, some of that upkeep will be paid for by the tax dollars that have already been earmarked for this project. I might add money that might be spent on other municipalities if we don't seize the opportunity now. Autonomous vehicles, while might have a small role to play in the future, will not supplant the need for a mass transit system for the city, nor should it. The world is changing. We must change with it or face the consequences. Having your own personal vehicles is something that might be changing. Most of the detractors of the BRT project do not know the history of the project. They do not know that if they do not know the history of it, they should stop and learn it. It did not just happen with the current council. The plan is far from perfect, but it is the interim step that London needs to take to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. Also for Ward 13, John Fife Miller.
Thank you. I'm sure many of you here and have heard over and over again that if you're not in favor of the BRT plan, simply put, you're just not in favor of transit. I find that far from being the truth. I am 100% in favor of improved transit in this city. Other people, you'll hear them say it tonight, and they're exactly correct. Transit has been grossly underfunded in this city, and we have to make some changes. We need improved transit hubs. We need electric buses. We need an integrated GPS tracking system. We need better lighting and shelters at stops for people who are getting on and off the bus. We need more favorable routes, and we need a synchronized lighting system on our roadways that benefit everyone. I am not in favor of the basic BRT plan as it's rolled out right now. I could give you probably a multitude of reasons, but I'm going to hit 6. The north-south corridor is still controlled by a rail crossing on Richmond Street. The BRT lane running through Western is not marketable for a global university. And what I mean by that is today, Western competes with universities around the world, and I question how dynamic it is to put on your brochure that you have a dedicated bus transit lane through your campus. There are no north and south transit parking hubs, which were in the original design. The streets of the downtown core are simply too tight, and we keep trying to pack things in. King Street, I looked last week, we were trying to pack in a traffic lane, a BRT lane, bike lanes, parking, and walkable space. It just simply doesn't fit. And when it comes to cost, the associated part of that is when your politician tells you, don't worry about it. I do. Thank you.
Thanks, John. For Ward 13, Kevin Wilbee.
I would like the incoming council to reevaluate the current transit plan and BRT plan so that it reflects the current and future needs of residents. The way in which council went about communicating and implementing the current plan was not well done, and there were aspects of the current BRT plan that many Londoners are not happy with. London needs better transit, and there are reasonable improvements that can be made, including better buses, consistent and reliable bus schedules, improved amenities, including shelters and lighting, and affordable pricing for students, seniors, and regular users. As London continues to grow, improving public transit is part of the growing process. Council must meet with local residents, merchants, and developers and build a relationship of trust without pushing through plans that people are just generally going to be unhappy with.
Thank you, Kevin. Ben Benedict for Ward 13.
Thank you. I strongly support the principles of bus rapid transit because it represents a message to both Londoners and investors that London once again believes it is worthy of investing in. As a journalist writing about economic development issues, I've seen the benefits of these 20-year plans in municipalities like Kitchener, where the creation of an economic corridor has brought in multiple investment dollars beyond the original municipal investment without harming heritage structures and while maintaining the core's character. I believe that heritage structures can and should be saved as part of this plan. The view from the bus needs to be considered. This could even include historic and heritage components in the design of bus shelters along the route. We just need to be creative and proactive using placemaking and urban design principles that are appropriate and that reflect our community values. However, I also believe that the current plan is insufficient in that it does not address an integrated transportation plan that includes Via Rail, Greyhound bus, nor the London International Airport, and it does not connect residents to employment areas. What point is rapid transit if you can't get to work on time? As an economic plan, it intensifies development back into London's core and creates micro-business districts of our streets. London needs lateral thinking outside the box, and many concerns around BRT expressed by various Londoners captures this concern. This is a good start for London in building principles and sound economic future for Ward 13 and all of London that ultimately will protect neighborhoods by concentrating intensification. For an integrated transportation plan, vote Ben Benedict. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. For Ward 13, David Lundquist.
Well, the problem with BRT, and not the problem, the reason you want a BRT is to take market share of passenger trips from single-use vehicles and put them onto mass transit. That's the goal of any BRT system. And, you know, I just don't see that happening in our current system. Not because we don't need a proper BRT system, but because we haven't taken the time to get London Transit right to begin with. Second of all, there's a dirty secret about BRT a lot of people don't know about, and that is that $400 million is going to be used not to build great transit, but to build wider roads so that we can accommodate the same number of single-use vehicles through the city. That kind of defeats the purpose of a mass public transit system. You want to reduce the number of vehicles that you have in your public on your city and move those passengers into mass transit. The two routes offer different levels of service, and they don't go in a straight line. There's another problem with our current plan. But as one other important feature to remember, we haven't done any proof of concepts on BRT by running express buses along the proposed routes, and 3/4 of the route that the BRT buses will travel go through a sea of large parking lots with big box retailers at the very back of those parking lots. You can take a look for yourself by going to Google Maps and checking satellite view. The fact of the matter is that we have a bronze level service that is costing us gold level series of dollars, $22 million per kilometer, as opposed to just $8 million for Brampton Transit and their hybrid BRT rapid transit system. Brampton is a city, for those of you who don't know, has experienced 18% increase in transit growth this year alone, has gone from 5 million transit users to 26 million transit users. London Transit today is at the same number of transit users that it was back in 1988, about 23 to 24 million transit users a year. I think we can do a lot better if we sit down and get London Transit working first and then roll out a hybrid BRT system that really serves the city. Thank you.
Thanks, David. For Ward 14, Jared Zafman.
As a councillor for the last 4 years, one of the most pressing issues which I hear most frequently about is construction. This year's construction and next has and will continue to cause some headaches. But frankly, I will take another annoying season of driving instead of another sinkhole. A major priority of mine over the last 4 years has been making sure, although it's not one of the sexiest priorities to talk about, is investing properly in our infrastructure, which is something that has not been done for years, which is why things have been continually patched up, resulting in hundreds of millions of dollars that we need to make sure we have great infrastructure people can rely on for years to come. Another major issue is our transit system. On many of our major roads, you cannot reliably depend on our transit system because buses are often running behind, stuck in mixed traffic, and slowing everyone else down on the road as well, including drivers. So here are two major issues that BRT can help the city solve at a fraction of the cost. The majority of the cost of BRT is for road widenings and enhancement to the tune of close to $430 million of the total $500 million. And here's the thing. This is pretty much with or without BRT that these will need to be done. Right now, though, the majority of costs will be covered through money you have already paid in taxes to the provincial and federal government. And frankly, I would much rather you not have to pay for this infrastructure again and your money not going to another project in the Greater Toronto Area. BRT will allow for expanded and consistent service, not just on the major corridors, but in Ward 14 as well. One quick example is the bus, the Adelaide 16, would begin to run every 10 minutes instead of 20. There are many reasons why this is a great project, and I think, frankly, one of the great things and people are so worried about is what's going to happen if our numbers don't come through. Well, here's the thing. We're paying for infrastructure, and that's the major portion of this project. We get to keep that in the end, and if the buses don't work, well, maybe we can put in an HOV lane or a mixed taxi lane, or we can put it back to mixed traffic. There are many options that we are not limited to once this is done, but frankly, let's not waste this opportunity for $400 million from other levels of government that you have already paid for.
Thank you, Jared. For Ward 13, Gil Warren.
Thank you. I support the proposal that City Council has voted on for bus rapid transit. I also support the staff of City Hall who have worked really hard on this project. It's a controversial issue. I see that the audience tonight is maybe split 50-50. But let's talk about probably the most contentious part of it, which is dedicated lanes for the buses. Many of us grew up in the 50s and 60s, and we saw the car as a monopoly. It had 100% of everything. We need to change that perspective, and we must share the roadways. There shouldn't be a monopoly for anybody. And we need to stop urban sprawl. And it's too costly to serve these urban areas if you have just single cars going out. We need medium rise, medium density, and that's what bus rapid transit is trying to do. The dedicated lanes will allow the buses to be on time, slightly faster, and no bunching. If buses are crowded and late, riders stop using them and they decline. If you want to increase the amount of buses in the city, you need to have a bus rapid transit system in a dedicated lanes. The BRT corridor is the future LRT corridor. The City of Ottawa started bus rapid transit in 1983, 35 years ago, and they are now about to begin a full LRT system because the bus system became overloaded after 35 years. It works. Other cities have done bus rapid transit. It is the cheapest way and the most efficient way to get mass transit going. Many of my opponents say that they're not for BRT, but they're for some fuzzy view of public transit. They're for the same old thing that we've always had. They dress it up with a better bus stop. Either you're in favor of dedicated lanes and you're in favor of bus rapid transit, or you're not. And we cannot stand still in this city. We have to move forward. The other piece of this is the funding. People say to me, it's going to cost $500 million. That's so much money, but it's over 10 years. So that's actually $50 million a year. How much does the city now spend on roads for cars over 10 years? Guess what? It's $500 million, the same number. $500 million
Thanks,
over
Gil.
10 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ariel Kayabaga for Ward 13.
I think that there's a serious problem in our city when we can't rely on transit to get to work, to school, to meetings or appointments. It is evident that our transit system has not been the focus, nor the resources have they been allocated to make our city reflect the strong city that it is. The proof is, London has one of the lowest funded transit systems in the province. This is why I support Council's vision for mass transportation. Any good plan created by a municipality leverages dollars from other levels of government. We've already secured funding for more than $107 million from our provincial government, and we have received a commitment of $204 million from federal government. The current proposed plan is that $270 million job creation project, which will employ approximately 430 people for a decade. We've seen $1.1 billion in building permits issued this year, which will only increase as we continue to build a transit system that works for all of London. When our provincial tax dollars are going to transit projects in other communities, such as $868 billion in Waterloo, $1 billion in Hamilton, $5.5 billion in Ottawa, it means that our money is working for other communities and not our own. I'm in support of a plan that promotes mass transportation because we are not a village. We are a mid-sized city that should have a good transit system. We are a city that hosts students and that has good tourism sector. To date, I have not seen another proposed plan for mass transportation in our city, and if there were one to compare it to BRT, I would look at it. Until then, I will continue to support Council's vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. For Ward 13, Jonathan Hughes.
When did we lose our ability to have the courage to be bold as a city? It's so many people standing in this election are not willing at the door when you say, I don't know about BRT. It's okay, I'm against it. I think we need to be able to make the difficult decisions as a councillor. It hasn't always been communicated well, but we need to be able to go out there and explain that it's data-driven and it's the right thing to do. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. A great city needs great transit. Approximately $370 million from our provincial and federal partners. Do you think if we go back on BRT, that Doug Ford's going to say, well, hey, why don't you keep the $170 million? I don't think that's going to happen. And what's going to happen is your taxes are going to rise to do that road improvement work that needs to be done anyway. BRT isn't perfect, but it's flexible and can be extended. It does need to go out to the airport. It does need to go to industrial areas. If autonomous vehicles come along, maybe they will. But the dedicated lanes will be the perfect thing to use for those. And you know, we're just talking about transit, but I want to talk bolder. We need high-speed rail here in London. Cities like Kitchener-Waterloo are eating us for lunch. They're taking our jobs. People like Google are moving in because they're moving forward. We need to move this city forward and bring new jobs, high-speed rail, good transit. That's what will work for us. And not only that, but I want to keep us healthy as a community. So active transportation is key. There has to be better bike lanes for commuters and recreational uses, more pedestrian walkways, and places where multi-use trails, where people can just have fun and run and whatever it needs. Let's be bold. Pick a councillor who will be courageous. Jonathan Hughes will be that councillor for you.
Thank you, Jonathan. For Ward 14, Steve Hillier.
We must develop a transit plan that works for all Londoners. Personally, I don't support the current BRT plan as it's a mega project involving hundreds of millions of dollars that should reflect public input. Council approved the current plan without the input of most Londoners and the businesses it affected. As your Ward 14 councillor, I would fight to have meaningful public consultation all over London on a transit project, including the businesses it would affect. The Downtown Business Association, Covent Garden Market, and the restaurants along King and Richmond were not included in this discussion process with personalized visits to their businesses. I work with these businesses regularly, and when members of the current council said they were on board with the BRT plan, it made many of them very upset, as this was not true. These businesses cannot attend these meetings because they're held during their busiest times. Many have said that the BRT proposal should have been a question on the ballot this election, and to see how the people really feel. Recently, we have seen major developments happening with the transit plan. Did you know they are removing the dedicated bus lanes on Richmond from Oxford to University Drive and using bus bays for passenger pickups with shared traffic lanes? This was announced at the LTC meeting last Wednesday, and I was very surprised to be the only council candidate there in attendance. There have also been discussions on a plan to provide service to some of the industrial areas. This should have been happening right at the start of the transit discussion and not a reactionary afterthought. When we create a system that is focused on supplying timely bus transit into these industrial areas, employers can hire more people and expand. I will push for service improvements so that we can access good, well-paying jobs in Ward 14 and all the industrial areas when and where the buses are needed. A proper transit system will help London by attracting new industry and jobs into London. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And also for Ward 14, Allan Tipping.
Okay, let me just start off with saying this BRT is a mistake. It doesn't serve anybody other than people within a couple minutes of a stop or a transfer point. It is not going to be faster. I sat in an environmental meeting talking to the head lady of this, and she said you're lucky to get 2 minutes quicker across the city. For that type of money, is it worth it? It's going to cost way too much for what we get. I propose a different idea. We just tore up Highway 100, which is Veterans Memorial. Why didn't we put a bus lane down the center? Why don't we put one down a road in the north? Why not one around a road in the west, and why not back up one in the south? Why don't we start by seeing our city's going to expand? Let's put a one-way bus lane all the way around the city that can access the 911 emergency lighting so it can switch and go through. Let's run microbuses in subdivisions and take out those big buses that destroy our roads. Let's run our main buses north, south, east, west. East-west. Let's just have to know what direction of the city you get into, you have to get to. You jump on a transfer bus, it takes you to a stop, you jump on the ring road, it takes you around the city, and you can move back in. We timed it. I timed it going from my side of the city, Ward 14, out by the 401 on Wellington Road, all the way down to Fanshawe. We went out Highway 100 and came in, and it took me less than 10 minutes when we went that way. And that was through heavy traffic. And then we came through the city, which this city believes we need to run a bus from White Oaks Mall to Fanshawe, zigzagging all the way through the city so nobody knows where it goes. Bus schedules and routes are so hard for people to understand. Let's use the European model. Anybody's been over to Europe? They move people the best. Let's start there. Let's move people to the outside of our city, ring them around our city, and then bring them back in. That way you can also access all the outside communities. Why do we believe everything has to start at the core of this city? This core is not a clean city. We need to clean it up. Everybody remembers Skate Canada, how beautiful, safe, and clean it was? Well, it's back to the way it was before that.
Thanks, Allan. Thank you very much. All right, we're getting into it now. Fantastic. Let's move on to an equally exciting topic, taxes. Everybody has to pay taxes. Nobody likes paying them, but we know that they are important. They fund things like local school boards, fire and police services, transportation, parks and rec, even garbage pickup. In 2018, the overall residential tax rate is 1.350819%. So my question to candidates, what do you think of our current tax rates? Should they increase or decrease? And if so, how would you make up the difference or spend the additional funds? And we'll be starting this time with Rod Morley for Ward 13.
I'd like to start off by saying that I do like the approach of the council now, where we have an established 4-year budget, which allows for having stable increases and be able to plot out for the future that way. And I think I commend the council for that one. I think that was a great move. It really does help to give a 4-year plan as opposed to having surprises every year when tax rates come around. Beyond, I would have to say that the way that we're working now, if we need to really improve transit, there might be some tax increases there that still might be needed, because I don't think BRT itself is going to be what we need. There's got to be more to it. And unfortunately, any of the other plans that are discussed are going to basically still have tax implications for us anyway. So going a different route from the BRT is still going to cost money anyway. So I think we need to just realize that. We've inadequately funded transportation, mass transit in the city, and this would be the way to one of the ways that we'll have to make it up in the future.
Thank you, Rod. For Ward 13 also, John Fife Miller.
Thank you. Just to start off, for tax increases, and somebody said not everybody likes to pay tax. I think one of the notes earlier that you heard on BRT is that the money is just sitting there and it's already been collected. I think one of the things that we all know is a realistic fact is when you have no money and you're in debt, no money is sitting there at the end of the day. So money that gets collected and paid and promised is a promissory note that will be collected years down the road by my children on tax. So as far as taxes here, when you look at the last 5 years, your taxes have gone up somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15%. And I don't think we have a lot to show for that tax increase. I'm going to echo what Rod said. The multi-year budget I'm happy with, but I struggle with. And I think part of that is a multi-year budget sets a new zero. So when you multi-year budget, it seems that every year we go in with an automatic tax increase, and then what we want to do as a city is we want to reassess. And so we add on to that tax increase. So I can get behind multi-year budgeting, but the only way I can get behind multi-year budgeting is if that number comes in under the rate of inflation. If it comes in under the rate of inflation, then it allows you to reassess every year and bring that number up to meet the rate of inflation, because I believe that's a good number for a tax increase. I also believe that we can tie taxes to specific programs, and I'm not going to use BRT as an example. What I'm going to say is a green bin program. To institute a green bin program may take 2 years, and there may be a small tax increase that's tied to that, but right now in London, one of our problems is those tax increases continue. Even once it's rolled out, you're still paying for those.
Thanks, John. Thank you very much. Kevin Wilbee for Ward 13.
When it comes to taxes overall, I believe in accountable governance that preserves your trust and delivers effective outcomes while safeguarding your taxpayer funds. Tax rates are in part, the tax rate is attached to the current value assessment of your property as done by MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. In addition, London has adopted a multi-year budget style that covers a 4-year period that is linked to London's strategic plan. I support the strategic plan, the multi-year budget, and the strategic investments that our community is working towards, such as mental health and addiction strategy, homelessness prevention, the London Community Foundation's Back to the River project, the Green Bin Implementation Fund, and other projects like those. Municipalities like London are facing increased responsibilities paired with significant decreases in funding from the provincial and federal governments. With limited resources available, staff and council must work together with citizens to keep tax rates affordable and choose the projects and ideas that will have the greatest impact on the quality of life in London.
Thank you, Kevin. Ben Benedict for Ward 13.
Thank you. London's tax base is growing with new developments, as well as new expenses to cover the increase in services required. However, growth alone does not cover the cost of growth, and London's infrastructure deficit also continues to grow. According to the City of London's website, property taxes are calculated based on the value of each individual home and is reassessed every 4 years by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. What London needs is not new taxation, but smart taxation that recognizes the fiscal challenges faced by many homeowners, for example, seniors, or those who have lost income in the recent global financial crisis, or from the migration of manufacturing jobs from London. I do not support tax breaks for heritage or vacant properties. Buying any property comes with its own set of issues. Taxes pay for municipal services, and whether you live in a heritage or a new building, those services are still required. So what is fair taxation? Rather than a floating value or tax system where rental apartments pay more than condos and enhance the housing crisis, how about taxation per square foot or of residence or property size tied to the rate of inflation. To keep council in check, you could add no increases or a zero tax rate every 4 years during the election year to prevent councillors from using tax dollar spending or not as an election issue. With a fluctuating house market, owners simply want security in knowing that what their annual contribution will be without being challenged by market conditions outside their control. That city services will be there when they need them. Finally, I support the municipal accommodation tax of 4% to be implemented on overnight accommodations. According to Tourism London, it will generate between $2 and $4 million annually for London's cultural development. I would like a portion of this to go to celebrating and creating community events similar to a program that's currently runs in Montreal, which supports and enhances local culture through the Neighborhood Small Events Fund. For fair taxation and sound municipal investments, vote Ben Benedict. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. For Ward 13, David Lundquist.
Well, I think a lot of times London leaves a lot of opportunities for increasing its tax base at the table because of poor urban planning decisions and because we continue to allow urban sprawl to increase, which increases everyone's tax burden. The idea of increasing taxes based on the rate of inflation is also a little obnoxious to me because, quite frankly, I've never seen inflation in my paycheck keep pace at the same rate as well. So I don't think that that's the right approach. London is going through an enormously hot housing market, and a lot of us are going to get impact assessments that are going to drastically increase the value of our properties. And in the fact of the way that the city currently calculates taxes, as Kevin alluded to, it's based on property value. I also think that the city has to take more attention onto business taxes, which are currently some of the highest in the province and need to be dealt with. I finally think that we need to stop going on budgets that are on autopilot and just spending whatever residual remains because it's in our budget, and if we don't spend it, we might lose it. I think every year we have to have a serious discussion about the budget. I think there are core things that we need to ensure have stable funding, like transit, garbage collection, and a recycling program that focuses eventually on creating a zero-waste city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. For Ward 14, Jared Zafman.
When it comes to taxes, I think that generally we would like to hear that your taxes are being lowered or that they're being kept where they are, because none of us really like paying more taxes or spending more of our money. But the way I look at taxes is there's often costs that are rising on a yearly basis that the city is charged with. Unfortunately, sometimes these are above inflation rates, and we have to be able to deal with that. Another thing, which is a driving principle for myself, is making sure that we are investing now to save later because costs will only go up. This is a point that I mentioned talking about BRT, but frankly, if we look at our infrastructure and how much we're paying just to catch up, is making taxes go up. So if we're able to put money aside now in a smart way and invest properly, we can reduce taxes and keep them down in the future so our cost is not as high. Another aspect which we need to focus on with taxes is making sure that we have a great working relationship with the provincial government to assist us with many aspects. Just a couple examples, we have many great organizations in our city like the Upper Thames Conservation Authority, London Middlesex Housing Corporation, and a board that I served on, the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority. With all of these, they are mandated to be run and funded by municipalities with a provincial component, but that provincial component has been frozen for 20 plus years now with the city being responsible for picking up the tab. We need to make sure we have that great working relationship so that we have the money we need to be able to pay for all the services that people expect us to provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. For Ward 13, Gil Warren.
So on the issues of taxes, there are voters who would like to see a 50% cut in their taxes and a 50% increase in their services. But it doesn't work that way. It doesn't add up. As treasurer of the Unity Project, I know that dollars in equals dollars out. There's a myth out there that there's this gigantic reservoir of fat down at City Hall, and you just have to cut that fat, and you could keep the services and cut your taxes. It's a myth. And it's pushed by right-wing conservative politicians and lobby groups because what that really means is cuts. So if someone's telling you they're going to cut the fat, they're going to cut your garbage collection, they're going to cut your police, they're going to cut the emergency services. So don't fall for that. One of the other people said that, was commenting about how much money was going to be spent for the BRT. If we don't use the money for the BRT that's coming from the federal and provincial governments, it will go to another city. We're not going to get a refund if we kill the project. But that idea is another one of those myths that's floating out there. I believe in fair taxes. I didn't say I believe in cutting taxes. I believe in fair taxes. We need a fairer tax system. Low and middle income property owners and tenants pay a greater percentage than others. This is because your home is usually, for a low and middle income person, your entire wealth, it's your entire assets. If you're a billionaire, that really big expensive house is actually only a tiny percentage of your wealth. You've got shares and bonds and everything else that are taxed at much lower rates than the property tax. We need to have a conversation with the provincial and federal governments. And we need predictable funding from those governments. And we need a share of their federal income tax and provincial income tax and their sales taxes. In the United States, cities can levy their own sales taxes. They have a more diverse stream of revenue rather than just property taxes. And the other thing that's happened is we've had 30 years of austerity, and what's happened is very wealthy corporations and people have not paid their taxes. They've had cuts in their taxes, and billions of dollars have been taken out of the system. And that's why we don't have money for social services, and we don't have money for sewers and other things.
Thanks, Gil. Thank you very much. For Ward 13, Ariel Kayabaga.
I think that everything has been listed. There's not much information I can add more, but let me try this. I came to this city as a refugee, and I come from a country where taxes are not a thing. And people have to pay for their own schools. People have to pay for extra things because there's no taxes. So I appreciate the current tax rate in this country. And I'm very happy to be here in a country where we care about picking up garbage, fire service, police services. We pay for ambulances together. But our current tax is at a fair rate. But there are disadvantages for single household parents, for young families that just bought their first home and are living from paycheck to paycheck. However, we have to continue to grow our tax rate at a normal rate so that we don't hike it too much for people who are still working dollar to dollar, who need their every dollar. And we're also giving fair opportunities to working families like mine who need their every dollar. But it's also important to remember that if we do not collect our taxes, we will not have a clean city. We will not have a city that anyone wants to live in. And together, our taxes keep us going in our city together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. For Ward 13, Jonathan Hughes.
Thank you. I think as a city, which includes all of you in the conversations that have been had, we've done a good job with the London plan. And that's allowed us to do some proper budgeting and give people the stability to know what funds they need. And that's very useful. So I really support the 4-year plan. I do think it needs to be on a rolling basis so we continually have that 4-year picture out. I want to disagree with some of the people here and just clarify. People have said, well, I'll support keeping below the rate of inflation. Be very clear what that means. Below the rate of inflation each year means cuts to services each year. I don't think you want a councillor who's committed to cutting services each and every year they represent you. I'm socially progressive, but I'm also fiscally responsible. I don't think any levels of government should be running a deficit in this current environment. And it's true that when we have a budget laid out over 4 years, it's tempting to just increase by the inflation rate. So we need to be, we really need to look at things. I believe that we need organic recycling. It's an important issue. We need to invest the dollars. A current councillor said to me, you know, we could do a landfill much cheaper. Maybe so, but I believe in doing the right thing, the principled thing. And if the services that we currently have that we're not getting good value for, your councillor also needs to stand up to those and say, how can we do it differently? So, yes, we need tight control over our budget, but we also need to look at what are the right services that we need, and we need to move the city in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. For Ward 14, Steve Hillier.
I feel politicians should be held to the highest standard and treat every single tax dollar as a precious resource. As your Ward 14 councillor, I will respect and maintain your trust, protect and properly manage your hard-earned tax dollars, and ensure council can deliver what's being promised. London can and must deliver high-quality public services in a way that's sustainable, transparent, and respectful. I am very worried that when the new council gets in, we may discover that the multi-year budgeting has put us on a path that will force unwelcome tax increases. This new method of multi-year budgeting could push costs forward and possibly cost us more in the long run. It's impossible to say with confidence the direction tax rates will go without knowing all the finer details not disclosed. Personally, I say if extra money is discovered in the budget or is found to be surplus from a project, it should always go against our debt to keep it as low as possible and we retain our AAA credit rating. The lower we keep our debt, the less we are paying in interest and the more money is available for city services. Then if a project is worth doing, it must be worth going further into debt for. This sets the bar even higher and new projects must meet this new standard. Personally, I promise to do my best to stretch your tax dollars as far as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And for Ward 14, Allan Tipping.
Well, taxes. If you're like me, we all hate them, but we have to pay them. My problem is when it goes above the rate of inflation. I believe that the 4-year budget is a good budget, but I also believe that every 4th year should be a zero tax increase for you, because you need to know when you're going to get a breath of fresh air. You need to know when you're going to be able to go out and spend a bit of extra money to make yourself happy, not make the city happy. Right now, we have development fees for all kinds of businesses that come to the city. But if you're a big business coming to a city, you're already being wooed by other cities. So why do we have development fees? Those businesses supply us our jobs. They're the ones that supply us the ability to pay our taxes. Let's invite these businesses here. Let's give them a way into our city without development fees. Let's suck it up. Let's pay to get them here. They will pay their taxes and they will give us jobs. One other thing is here. Remember, taxes go up each year, not just because of the city. We need to get after impact, because how many people here realize they can't always sell their house for what they're paying taxes for? Impact just puts it up every year just because your neighbor down the road did a renovation and increased their house value. That doesn't mean yours has increased. If yours is 20 years old and theirs looks brand new, yours hasn't changed. Your value's not going up. So we can't just go after the city about tax increases. We have to go against impact too. We have to fight this. If we don't fight it, there's wasted spending like I see at City Hall now. I sit at City Hall council meetings, and all I hear is City Council thanking each other for the job well done. You know what? That's a 5-hour council meeting when we could be done in 2 hours. Let's smarten up. Let's do our job. Let's look at our books. Let's save this city taxes. When it comes to capital projects, those projects should be dated on our tax bill and only given a certain amount of time to be paid back. Because remember, when they increase them for BRT, that never comes back off the bill, and it should. We should know what our future holds when we're losing capital projects. We should be that safe and know where our money is.
Thanks, Allan.
Thank you.
And for Ward 14, Annette Smallwell. Oh, sorry, Swalwell.
That's okay, I'll see you. What can I say that hasn't been said already? I believe absolutely that our taxes do have to go up every year. I believe that we need to maintain our services. I absolutely believe that we have to invest in transit, that the city has to invest more money in transit. I remember 2 councils ago the promise of 0% increase for 4 years. It didn't happen. However, the impact is that the next council coming in is required to astronomically raise taxes in order to fix our roads, pay our police officers, make sure that we have firefighters, all of the services that we need to maintain those services.
Okay, we having fun yet? All right, I've got another controversial issue for our candidates tonight: safe injection sites. In February of this year, the Middlesex London Health Unit opened London's first temporary overdose protection site. where drug users can inject illegal substances under the supervision of a medical professional. They are currently making plans for at least one permanent safe injection site, which would serve the same purpose in the city. So, to our candidates, how do you feel about the presence of these types of safe consumption sites in London? And we'll be starting this time with John Fife Miller for Ward 13.
A year ago, I would have told you that this was a Ward 13 problem, but the reality is it's not. This is a citywide problem. And it's not only a citywide problem, but it's a regional problem that we have to deal with. I'll tell you that I'm 100% behind a form of safe consumption site from a humanity perspective and from a fiscal perspective. But let's keep in mind, a consumption site is a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. This is not a solution to the problem that you are seeing every day on the street. This is one piece in a 1,000-piece puzzle that we have to do. When you look at the current sites, one of the challenges I have is I come very much from a community model and a community perspective. I know we talk about people and neighborhoods being NIMBY that don't want a consumption site, but keep in mind, we have worked so hard with communities to get them to embrace them. And there is a fear when you look at previous sites in other locations that that community is simply a community that can be discarded. Well, first and foremost, I will guarantee you here today, that community will not be discarded in Ward 13. I think the other thing that we have is we have to keep in mind that this is a provincial issue. Healthcare is something that's taken care of by the province. So as a municipality, we have to watch that slippery slope. Because if you think that the province is happy on downloading things, trust me, the day they can download healthcare to a municipality, they'll be quite content to do so. So for some long-term things, I will not back a consumption site without full wraparound services. I will get 100% behind a mobile site because I believe mobile sites will better serve the city as a whole. And I think the big thing that we have to do is we have to get in line with our regional and city partners because this is a municipal issue.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
For Ward 13, Kevin Wilbee.
When it comes to safe injection sites, I will work with and listen to the advice of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Chris Mackey, and the Middlesex London Health Unit to continue to address this issue and to ensure that London is being taken care of. There has been, especially last summer, a huge problem of people doing drugs in public parks and in restaurant washrooms. That can't be going on. People were finding needles all over the place, and it's a public safety issue. This is a topic where you have to find the appropriate balance between achieving public health and public safety. I will also continue to support strategic priorities from the multi-year budget and the strategic plans, such as the mental health and addiction strategy and the homelessness prevention plan, because these topics are often interrelated, whether it be the homelessness or the drug addictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Ben Benedict for Ward 13.
I support safe injection sites and development of social infrastructure for several reasons. First, to give vulnerable individuals a second chance. No one ever sets out in life to be an addict, be it alcohol, cigarettes, or the various drug proliferation on our streets, and every addict is someone's daughter or son, sister or brother, wife or husband. We still need to be a compassionate society, especially with all the turmoil in the world. We all need a hand up, someone to show us they care, and that we are worthy of caring about. This is the value of safe injection sites. I also support safe injection sites as a public safety issue to prevent needles from proliferating in our parks and public spaces. Earlier in June, while speaking with a local police officer, he informed me that in 2017, London handed out 2 million needles, but only received 1 million needles back. That leaves 1 million needles in garbage bags and on our street, posing health hazards to city workers. children and pets, and anyone wanting to enjoy our parks and green spaces. London Cares Homeless Response Service Syringe Recovery Program helps, but only after a risk has been identified. Finally, I support safe injection sites so essential health services aren't focused on a single need, putting other individuals with health concerns at risk. Ambulances, either drug or alcohol overdoses, are a regular occurrence on my street. According to Public Health Ontario, since 2003, the number of deaths has increased 136%. More than 850 Ontarians died from opioid-related causes in 2016. Those numbers continue to climb. Ambulance calls and emergency room visits are costly, and while everyone deserves care, there are only so many ambulances in town, and they can't be in two places at once. Safe injection sites means an ambulance will be there when you fall or experience heart failure. For safer streets, vote Ben Benedict.
Thank you, Ben. For Ward 13, David Lundquist.
Hi. So this is the reason I am running for council. One of them that was motivating. And that was when I learned about the plan that London has put forward with Chris Mackey and the Middlesex Health Unit. It is a plan built on willing landlords who are willing to sell their tenants out. London Middlesex Housing Corporation is a social housing agency. And the fact is that the people who live at Simcoe Gardens are not drug users who are directly impacted by this particular thing and do not deserve to have their main floor turned into a supervised consumption facility. Let's talk about the real problem in London. Opiate addiction is a major problem in London, but if you're using street drugs in London, chances are 83% chance that you will be a polysubstance abuser, and the substance that you will be abusing is crystal methamphetamine. Crystal methamphetamine is not methadone or related to any type of opiate. It cannot be cured with a methadone treatment or another drug treatment. The drug is cheap, it's often locally produced, it's a dangerous neurotoxin that destroys your ability to have judgment, and it destroys the reward center in your brain. These changes are usually permanent, and in the best case scenario can take months or years to overcome. Users are vulnerable to paranoid psychosis, and most of the violent crime that we've seen in Ward 13 over this summer has been caused directly from methamphetamine users in violent paranoid psychosis. It has not been caused by some crazy guy who needed mental health services. Crystal meth destroys your mind. It is a drug that lasts for 8 hours after injecting and becoming high. For 42 hours, it will remain in your body unmetabolized. It is not an opiate that will be over in 15 or 20 minutes after the initial high. I understand the need of the temporary overdose prevention site, and I think we can do much better, and we can invest in that and start to work with building a real plan that sees mobile outreach workers go to the people in crisis in this city. We have to deal with these people, because if we continue to believe and treat everyone like an opiate addict instead of as a polysubstance abuser, we will fail. The temporary overdose prevention
Thanks,
sites only
David.
serve 4% of IDE users. Mobile sites serve 40%.
Thank you very much. Thank you. For Ward 14, Jared Zafman. Oh, sorry. Gil's so eager, he's just running up there.
I still thankfully got a little bit of hair left up there, so I'm doing okay. Just kidding. So first of all, while I certainly do a lot of reading and research at our council meetings for all of these issues, one of the things which I did do was take time to read a book that is strictly about this issue called Chasing the Scream. And it talks about how these issues are dealt with in many different countries across the world, and I would highly recommend for anybody who's looking into it. When this issue came to council, I would not endorse a specific site at the time that it was brought to us because, frankly, to me, it was very much a moving target that was trying to find a place that just simply worked in the time frame that we had. But there's one thing that I think would be really important to talk about here, which I don't think has been mentioned yet, and that this site, which we have in London, while certainly I know has caused some issues in and around the area, it has also prevented people from dying. There have been many, many overdoses which have been prevented at this site. And that is something that we cannot lose focus on. And in addition to that, instead of these people doing drugs in a public park or in an alleyway, they are doing it at this site in a safe manner, which is great for our community and it's great for them as well. This solves one issue, but to me it doesn't solve the issue, which is ideally giving these individuals a much better quality of life. And while it may sound cold, also reducing the burden on our community. That means our emergency medical services, our police, our medics, every one of those, their time and resources are spent dealing with these issues. If we have a site that can properly help these individuals, give them the supports that they need, then this is something that we could certainly move towards, and I would certainly be supportive of that. The temporary site that we have now doesn't quite get there, and I would certainly be open to seeing plans that come forward for a more permanent site with these supports involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. It's your turn now, Gil. Gil Warren for Ward 13.
We're back on schedule. I apologize to Jared there. So in terms of the safe consumption sites, it's a very emotional issue, and we've seen a lot of emotion with it. I support the safe consumption sites, and I think we as a society need to move from criminalization of drugs to seeing it as a health crisis. The war on drugs has failed. We've just allowed the bikers to have a lot of good business, and we've lost control of the situation. Drug addiction is not a death sentence. It should not be. And unless we deal with this crisis, that's what it becomes. People become addicted, and it's not just low-income people who become addicted. It's middle-class people. It's upper-class people. It's the children of middle-class people. Many, many families have been affected. In Ontario, 3 people are dying every day from drug overdoses. In Canada, 4,000 died last year. 4,000 people. And what if those 4,000 people had been in a Toronto tower and it had been blown up by terrorists? We would be making an incredible fuss about it. But it's 4,000 people here and there, and it doesn't really even make the news. But we need to provide services, and we need to deal with this crisis. And it's not just about the drugs. It's about the need for affordable housing. It's the fact that welfare is 50% of what it used to be back in the 1990s. And this project that the city has pursued has been monitored by researchers. And it works. It's keeping people alive. And people say, oh, well, just put them in drug rehab, right? Except that the drug rehab wait time is 6 months or a year. And what are you going to, in the meantime, they die. Well, they didn't make it to drug rehab. So I think that it's a very serious issue, and we need to really deal with it. And there's another message here in terms of spending for social spending. There is a threshold on that spending. And if you get over that threshold, you start to succeed. If you are under the threshold, you don't get the results, and people say it doesn't work, and they want to cut off the funding. And London Cares, which I'm involved with through the Unity Project, and other projects the city has done, they've tried really hard to keep people alive, to use housing first, to get them housed. And if you have safe, secure housing, then you can start to deal with all these problems you have.
Thanks, Gil.
All right, thank you.
For Ward 13, Ariel Kayabaga.
Safe injection sites save lives. Studies have shown that they're likely to save 25 to 75 lives per year. Over the last 10 years, the Vancouver site, which is the most studied in the country, reported to have controlled 3,500 overdoses on site by healthcare workers. HIV rates are going down everywhere else in Canada except in London, where they are on the rise. The cost to treat one person with HIV is $1.3 million. One single case of HIV prevented pays to operate a supervised consumption site for a year. So a safe consumption site makes sense economically as well. Hospitals are the most single expensive way to treat those with addictions, and our hospitals are already overcrowded, with people being made to sleep in hallways. We also know that those with addictions are more successful when the services provided where they use. So it wouldn't make sense to move the safe consumption site to a hospital. All of this can save us money between ambulances, emergency room, hospitalization, the cost of overdose death. That is money that we can put to fund other health and treatment options for reducing addictions. If preventing HIV and hepatitis cases and preventing users from experiencing skin infection that can cause balloons into the blood and heart elements that can send them to the hospital is enough for you, then you're not in the business of building community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. For Ward 13, Jonathan Hughes.
Thank you. I always have an issue with this when we call it the safe consumption side issue, because what it really is it's an addiction crisis. It's a people issue. Over 1,000 people died in Ontario last year because of addiction and overdose, and it's something we need to fix. We cannot wait for the whole package. If we wait, every week someone else in London will be dead. And that's not something as a councillor that I'm willing to stand by and watch and let happen. So I think we need to work on this issue now. So I'm in favor of both the temporary overdose prevention site. I'm in favor of long-term safe consumption sites. And where is the right place for them? The right place is exactly where they're needed, where the addiction is taking place today, because that's where they're going to get the most use. And the problem already exists in those neighborhoods. People worry about the safety and security. People worry about needles. And so putting the site in those areas actually improves the environment for everybody. And so that's so important. But it has to be part of an overall solution. We know it's not complete. We need to be able to provide other supports to people. It could be mental health. It could be housing. Whatever they might need, we need to, the facility needs to be used as an opportunity to help people to get to other services that they might need. And it hasn't been talked about a lot tonight, but we need to look prior to addiction. Why are we treating the problem that exists rather than looking forward and saying, let's help this person before they get addicted? And why does it happen? It happens through poverty. It happens through a lack of affordable housing. So that's something we can do at the council level. It's not health, but let's create more affordable housing. Let's have inclusionary zoning. That means developers have to, in every, particularly the larger buildings, they have to put in some affordable and safe units for people. Let's do the right thing so less people become addicted in the first place. That's what I'll do as councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. For Ward 14, Steve Hillier.
London has been experiencing an increase in fatal and near-fatal overdoses over the last year. It's hard to build a decent life, but it's very easy to destroy one with the drugs on the street today. Many people in our community are experiencing drug addiction, homelessness, and the challenges associated with the mental and physical health are growing at an alarming rate. Provincial cutbacks have made it very difficult for hospitals, the police, and social services to deal with all these issues in the community. And the drug use is causing this problem to grow exponentially. Safe consumption facilities are just one component to solving this crisis in London, but more must be done. These facilities are one place where people can visit for support, but it's also a safe and clean needles they need. Clean needles are important because our city has also experienced an increase in HIV and hepatitis. Discarded needles are a danger to everyone. Walk anywhere in the city, you will find them. If anyone is using them in the streets, they're probably not disposing them properly. Out at my own place, way out at Creamery Road in Dundas, if you take a turn down Creamery Road at the turnaround circle there, you will find hundreds of discarded needles on the turning circle. These are not people walking the streets. These are people driving in our cars, flicking them out the window after they've used them. This scares the hell out of me. Safe consumption facilities alone will not solve this crisis, but we also need wraparound medical and council services on site. I have asked Dr. Mackey and his staff to arrange a tour of the safe consumption facilities for myself and a friend so we can get a better understanding of this place. There are no easy solutions, and this problem spans all of London, and it only seems like it's in the low-income areas. It's everywhere. It's getting worse, and we have to find a solution now. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. For Ward 14, Allan Tipping.
First off, to understand this, we have to understand that addiction is a disease. It is not a choice by these people. The majority of people would choose not to be this way. So we supply them the necessary treatment for the disease, not injection sites. We're spending money on injection sites, but we're not treating it. We need to treat this problem. As these injection sites are actually allowing illegal activity. We need to watch the law. We need to be putting more energy into supplying treatment and sustainable supports. This is where I believe in the Housing First initiative. It is very beneficial for the people who rely on our assistance. Housing First simply means you give people the basic needs to survive: shelter, safety, and cleanliness. This cuts down on crime, loitering, and hospitalization, which then gives stability. Stability to start treatment, such as counseling, sobriety, and reintegration into our community. We should have an aim to make these people better. They are Londoners. They do mean to us. They are important to us. But a safe injection site is sure, it's saving lives, but I don't think it's where we need to go. We need to treat the problem at the source, and allowing them to inject is not treating the problem at the source. We need to counsel. We need to give them safety. We need to give them a place to live. We need to sustain them. Most people, when that happens, they will start looking on another side. Then we can give them counseling, reintegrate them into the community. They will get jobs. But it's a long time thing we have to do. But we have to remember, these people are addicted, and that is a disease. And we need to treat the disease first, and then look after the people as well, so that we can bring them back and have these people in our community.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you very much. Annette Swalwell for Ward 14.
It's hard going so close to the end because everybody's already said what I have in here. I absolutely believe in safe injection sites. I know they save lives. I know that they not sharing of needles, we lower rates of HIV and hepatitis, which saves our medical system a lot of money. Decrease in disease. Okay, I believe, however, I read just a few weeks ago again in the paper about a lady who was walking downtown, and she came across not one but two separate instances of drug users with the needle sticking out of their arms, called the police, and twice the police came and administered naloxone. So as I believe David mentioned, that a mobile unit or something as well as fixed sites may be helpful. And reducing the stigma, because it's not just people who are living in poverty and people who are low income. It's your neighbors. It's people who are making high incomes, who have become addicted to painkillers. We have to make sure that those people are helped as well, so that they're not dying in their homes alone because of the stigma of being addicted. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. And for Ward 13, Rod Morley.
Heavy topic. Let's all take a deep breath, and we can get through this one at the end here. And I happen to know that woman who was walking and saw that happen. Of course, the sites are needed. The mobile site might be a very good addition to it. It has to be done, and it can't be hidden away. We have to know it's there, and we have to recognize the problem is there still. And I also believe there should be medical and social services there available too, in order to, if the person is ready to go, to maybe look at changing the life, that there's the support and the resources there available in order to do that right there and then. And we also have to look at the issue is that it's not just a drug issue, it is a homelessness issue, it is a mental health issue, and the one thing that I would like to do is to put a lot of pressure on our provincial government to actually come up with a mental health strategy, which I think won't help the people now, but will help in the future and help reduce those numbers. And I think that has to be done in order for all the municipalities, in order to be able to see a reduction of rates. And if that is not done, then it'll be left to London, it'll be left to the municipalities to do it, and I don't think that's fair. We can do it, we can do some of it, but we can't do it all.
Okay, that first 90 minutes just flew by. We have one more prepared question. This one's going to be a bit shorter. It's only a minute. And it has to do with wards 13 and 14. So even though you're sharing a stage here tonight, we know that these two wards are very different. They have unique issues. So my question to candidates is very simple. What do you feel is the major issue facing your ward in the next 4 years? And we'll be starting this time with Kevin Wilbee from Ward 13.
The most important issue facing Ward 13 downtown London right now is the lack of housing, unaffordable rent, homelessness, mental health, and drug addiction. These are separate but interrelated issues, and they have come together to really pull down on the vibrancy of our downtown. I would like council to take a leadership role and have the city work effectively with the other levels of government and organizations by putting in place an umbrella for these organizations and a point person at the city so that they can develop benchmark goals and deliver measurable results in the areas such as housing, mental health, drug addiction, to start to turn the situation around. This includes working with the federal government on the National Housing Strategy, which is a plan to strengthen communities by strengthening the middle class and reducing homelessness. It also includes supporting strategic investments of the multi-year budget, such as the mental health, addiction strategy, homelessness prevention, and economic development.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
For Ward 13, Ben Benedict.
Thank you. Quality of life issues remain top of mind. Many of these long-standing issues that continue to plague Ward 13 have been repeatedly ignored by past councils. These concerns are primarily represented by Ward 13's position as the city's core, where competing interests for those who work, play, and live are at constant odds. And I'll provide two glaring examples. The first is increased concerns around petty crimes, car break and home break-ins, and the proliferation of litter that has plagued our streets. ANOVA's partnership with the City of London and the United Nations Safe City Project, a mapping survey where individuals can mark on our city map where they don't feel safe, shows that our streets are increasingly facing gender-based sexual violence and inequality. In the era of Me Too, we can do better. This is compounded by a shortage of police in the area. Further compounded by law enforcement and the police, who are currently both understaffed and undergoing turf wars over who does what and when. This needs to be addressed immediately. Second is the animosity created between those who live here and enjoy the historic streetscapes and those developers who only see dollars because they don't and never will live here. Given that 74% of Ward 13 residents rent, it places many in the community in precarious and unstable living conditions.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also for Ward 13, David Lundquist.
So, the challenging issues that you've heard tonight on Ward 13 relating to social issues are something that needs to be dealt with right away, not in a 4-year plan. But if you look at Ward 13 and where it's going, I think the one thing that we need to understand here is all of the existing and new startups that are showing up along Horton Road in the downtown core, they need to have access to the regional economy. And that means fast rail to the GTA, or we will continue to fall behind regions like the KW. And that's going to hurt our tax base. That's going to hurt the opportunities for young people. That's going to hurt a lot of the things that we want to accomplish in Ward 13. Ward 13 is a dynamic community. It's getting younger and younger. It's also getting an awful lot of London's high-tech startups, and we need that connectivity. The priority should be to work with all 3 levels of government to ensure that high-speed rail comes to London. Thank you.
Thank you, David. For Ward 14, Jared Zafman.
Every ward has many different issues, and Ward 14 is no different. There are many that I could list, but frankly, the one that I receive most emails, tweets, and Facebook messages about is frankly the lack of retail commercial entities that are in and around the ward. And one of the things which I have been able to do in assisting with this, and council has, is removing the commercial vacancy tax rebate, which means that properties that have been sitting vacant for years and years are no longer to be able to do that One other piece, which is going to be a major issue for Ward 14 over the next 4 years, is the building and construction of our new community center for Southeast London. This is going to be something which is going to take up a great deal of time and energy of everyone in the ward, and I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be involved and leave their mark on this new great facility that could also hopefully facilitate some more businesses to come to the ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. For Ward 13, Gil Warren.
Thank you. Ward 13 is unique. It is the only downtown ward that we have. It has designated heritage districts in it, and it's a constant struggle to preserve the heritage of those neighborhoods in their history and in their architecture. There is great pressure from very big developers. Our economy is recovered now, and they're looking for land to develop. We've also got gentrification going on within Ward 13. And what we need, while we need to encourage gentrification, we need matching affordable housing. So every unit that's taken out of apartments and transferred into a single-family house, there needs to be a matching affordable housing to go with that. I've led the fight to save the old library and newspaper office at 467 Dufferin, and that's been a classic struggle between the Community Association of Woodfield and the developer. Downtown, we have empty parking lots. They should be used for development. But the owners are sitting on the land speculating that when the high-speed rail gets here, they can make a lot of money by flipping the property or building a big tower.
Thanks, Gil. Thank you very much. For Ward 13, Ariel Cayabaga.
I think that the most important issue in our ward right now is homelessness. There's a crisis in homelessness, and there's a lot of people on the street right now. Our main priority should be finding homes for people. But there are other issues such as affordable housing, protected cycling tracks, a waste management plan, and for seniors, there's issues in retirement homes and the healthcare system that they need. We need to solve social issues in the downtown core, petty theft, supporting our businesses as the downtown experiences construction and disruption are to create a better transit system have affected them. But I do stress that our most important priority right now is to find homes for people. There are a lot of people on the streets of London right now, especially in the downtown core, and homelessness has a clear link to petty crime, drug use, and other social issues facing the ward right now. Solving that will be the first step we take in tackling other issues that we are facing downtown, and will create a better atmosphere for our downtown businesses to better strive. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. For Ward 13, Jonathan Hughes.
For me, the number one issue is the revitalization of the downtown core. I believe we need a vision. The center of the city is the core, and if we can move that forward, I know many of you are already downtown champions, but I believe we need every Londoner to be a downtown champion. When they think of a place to live, I want them to consider downtown. When they think of a place to work, I want them to think the best place is downtown. Somewhere to learn. Why shouldn't we learn downtown? And even if it's somewhere to play, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's the hockey, whatever it might be, we want to encourage people downtown because you can't have a great city without a great downtown. And I picked that issue because everything else that we've covered tonight is part of the revitalization of the downtown. It won't happen unless we sort out the addiction issue. It won't happen unless we provide affordable housing. It won't happen unless you all feel safe and secure in your homes. The most important thing we need to do is get more people downtown. And I believe we need to have some development right in the core to make that happen. But we need to do it in an appropriate way. It also needs to respect many of the such important districts that we have, the heritage conservation districts. But we need to make things happen downtown.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Let's be proud of our downtown again. I think we can do it.
Thank you. For Ward 14, Steve Hillier.
Attracting jobs, investments, and getting Londoners working again. This has always been the core issue. Constant distractions and analog thinking have caused over a decade of job creation and investment to be lost to other municipalities. It simply just takes too long to get shovels in the ground. Personally, I have two sons who graduated from post-secondary education, and I don't want to lose them to another city. As your Ward 14 councillor, I will work to make London more receptive to business. I have decades of experience starting, supporting, and growing businesses. I'm a manufacturing engineering technologist. I speak the language of the manufacturers we need to attract with their better paying jobs and opportunities. Success starts with taking a positive customer service approach while nurturing local businesses and helping employers and industries grow in our community. We must utilize all of our industrial land so it reaches its full potential, and we must retain the valuable businesses we have. Together, we can move forward as a prosperous and thriving city I know London can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. For Ward 14, Allan Tipping.
This is a question that has many number one issues in our ward. It's hard to discuss all of them because we're given one, but I'm going to touch on two that work together. First off, Ward 14 needs a councillor down at City Hall that is strong, willing to speak up, and not afraid to go in new ventures. That's what we need. Ward 14 has been buried in the city and not heard from for years. It's time now to speak up. I lived in Ward 14 my whole life. And you know what? We've been given the bum stick in the city. Summerside has not gotten a school. We haven't had a community center, as Jared said. We got to work for that stuff. But the other thing we have to do, which is very important, we have to clean up our low-cost housing. We don't have enough of it. I canvassed through those areas, and I feel very sad for those people, what they're living in. Doors with no locked handles on the front of them. We need to step up and protect these areas. We need to work hard. We need a strong voice, and I strongly believe I'm that voice. And if anybody has seen me on TV or on the radio, they know I speak that. I speak my mind. Sometimes it's not always politically correct, but you know what? Sometimes it has to be said.
Thank you, Allan.
Thank you.
Also for Ward 14, Annette Swalwell.
Well, I have to echo Jared and Allan in a couple of respects. A lot of the people that I'm talking to in Ward 14 are very unhappy with the empty buildings that we're finding around Summerside. The old Rona building, they've just sat there empty for years, and they're very unhappy about that. But as I'm canvassing through some of the other areas like Pond Mills, and along Millbank, the social housing, those homes are deplorable. Those people, I feel so sorry for people who are living in those homes. We really have to do a better job of keeping those homes, making higher quality homes, or even bringing the quality of those homes up. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. For Ward 13, Rod Morley.
For Ward 13, it is downtown revitalization, but it's a multi-pronged approach we'll have to do. We need to be able to bring new businesses and new resources to the downtown core. I've already started to possibly work with Innovation Works to come up with some ideas of being able to retain the students that are here every year, Western and Fanshawe, and to keep the numbers here in London as opposed to them getting their education and just leaving again. We do have to, though, make sure that the downtown is safe. So we go back to the homelessness issue, and again, we have to get the provincial governments to get moving, to come up with a workable plan in order to help us that way for homelessness issues, providing funds, mental health issues that way as well. With that, once we have those issues started on, then we can have a safer looking, a feeling safer approach for everyone, for the entire population of Ward 13.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you. And for Ward 13, John Fife Miller.
This is tough when you go last. I'm going to hit on one different piece, and that's going to be housing. I think one of the things that we have noticed for those of us who have campaigned the ward, there is an awful lot of multi-user properties in Ward 13, and with that, an awful lot of unused multi-user properties. This city is crying out for rental space, And I think there is a ton of rental space there that's well underutilized that we can utilize better. And I do think one of the things we have to remember is Ward 13 is not just downtown. Downtown is a component of Ward 13. We have 11 neighborhoods that surround us. 11 neighborhoods that we need to be very proud of, because those neighborhoods are all unique. They all bring something to this ward. And I think when you walk through them and utilizing those spaces, it will make a more vibrant community for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so here's where it gets really fun. Thank you so much, candidates, for answering those questions that you've prepared ahead. Now we're going to put you on the spot. We're going to take some questions from the audience. You can stay seated to answer these. There are wireless mics there for you to use. To the audience, if you have a question you would like to ask, feel free to raise your hand. Andrew will be walking around with the wireless mic, and he'll try to get as many as he can in the short time that we have. You can direct a question to just one or a few candidates if you'd like, or to the whole panel, and they'll have up to a minute to answer. I think Andrew might kick it off. He's got a question he's been dying to ask, so we'll let him start.
Yes, I'm going to start because we're in my workplace, the Aeolian, and I think it's really important, arts and culture and community vitality in our city. So I want to know, if elected or if re-elected, what priority will you put on arts and culture on our city?
Okay, we'll be starting with Ben Benedict for this one. If we can pass the mic down to Ben there, that would be great.
Hello. As a culture worker, I strongly believe in London's cultural sector. As culture is an economic driver, it builds businesses, it creates jobs. We have a great history here. We have our own regional style. Forest City Gallery is one of the first artist-run centers. Our Arts Council is revered across Ontario, if not the whole of Canada. Culture is what we do. If you play soccer, those green spaces are culture. Coming to the Aeolian, you are participating in culture. Everything you do that creates a quality of life has to do with culture. Investing in culture is like saving money at the bank, only it pays better interest because it creates currently 7 to 20 times back the investment. So yeah, I support culture very, very strongly, and I hope everyone does too. I like to say I was probably the only one that saw Slayer's last concert here at the Budweiser Center on August 6th. And as Foghat said during their show at Blues Fest, I'm a fool for the city.
Thank you, Ben. Probably the only quote we'll have from Foghat this evening.
Amen.
We're going to head to the back row. David Lundquist, if you can pass the mic there. You can stay seated, please.
Thank you. So when I came to London, I moved to Soho. I'm an artist, and I like to do paintings and sculptures. I understand how important art is to the community. One of the things that's really important as well is a city that doesn't create a lot of bylaws and problems for one-time installations or artistic expressions and encourages people to become creative. Too often in the city, I see things where the bylaw officers are out because they don't like the size of your flower garden or your wild weed meadow, or they're rushing down the street because they think that that mural you did on the side of your restaurant is graffiti and you need to take it off immediately. I think we need to start looking at culture and artistic expression as something that's integral to London, because there's an awful lot of good artists in the city. And we have to start not just dealing with the funding issues, but also the issues related to bylaws that so prevent our artists from really flourishing and expressing themselves. Thank you.
You very much, David. Jared?
Thank you. The arts and culture are a crucial part of any city that wants to be a thriving, vibrant city. One of my first things that I got to do on council was be put with the question of whether or not to keep Orchestra London alive, essentially. And that was one of the most difficult things, even after these 4 years, that I had to do and make that decision to say no, because frankly, as much as the arts and culture are important, it also has to be done in a sustainable way that our community can afford. It has to be something that we can enjoy, but also be able to know that it's not going to break the bank for us as a community. We put a lot into different services. I think someone mentioned soccer. The sports are really important important for some people, arts are more important for others. So we can find ways, I think, to invest in that and to support that. One of the other examples was we were pressed with the Palace Theatre needed to make sure that their roof wasn't going to fall in on themselves. And so they looked for a loan from the city, and I made sure that rather than having to pay for a consultant to make sure that the repair was done properly, that we had internal staff do that consultation ourselves so that we could have some cost savings there and make sure that it did work properly.
Thanks, Jared. Gil?
Yes. The first thing is that arts and culture creates jobs, and they are labor intensive. It's hard to get a robot to do painting. But at the same time, we need adequate government support for the artists. They shouldn't be sentenced to a life of poverty because they're very good artists. The other thing is, art should not be elitist. It shouldn't be a wealthy person as a patron buying art. It should be everybody who pays taxes, who contributes to the funding of the artists, who enjoy the art, and who produce the art. Working people should be artists, and they should have real art on their walls as well. As I said before, I'm treasurer of the Unity Project, the emergency shelter in London. Every year we do our biggest fundraiser at the Palace Theatre across the street. It's called Up With Art. Last year we raised $120,000 in one evening. And it was a combination of artists and poverty coming together. And some of the artists were people from our shelter. So we have worked really hard to further the arts in London East.
Thank you. Ariel?
Thank you. I think that arts save lives. They keep kids out of trouble. And it provides a space where participants can go through a healing process from different traumas that they've lived. I would encourage more street art, street dancing, and other forms of arts which are proof of a vibrant city. The first thing I look for when I go and visit a city is the artistic spaces, because it provides me an understanding of the people that are residing in that city. Our arts culture sector is vital to have a better quality of life, but it is also important to have arts and culture that fosters inclusiveness and encourages diversity. As many of you know, London citizens are from different countries around the globe, and this is what makes us a more connected and unique city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jonathan?
Arts and culture is obviously very important to all of us. And I think, to be honest, we're always going to struggle for funding. So I think that we have to show that arts and culture is something that we care about and that we want to be involved in. So my biggest message would be to all of you, and even to myself, is let's get out there and actually support arts and culture that's happening in our community. Go to a theatre production, prom queen's coming up. Be involved in the open doors, but don't just go to the typical places where people go. Go to something where something a little bit different is happening. We need to support all the festivals in our city. And I'll focus on one thing. I've talked a lot about development in the city. Developers do well about all the services we provide to them. When we improve transit, they do well because it increases the value of the building. We need to make sure that when development happens as well, that we're getting money back to help for the services that we provide. And I believe a significant percentage of the money that we get should go into arts and culture, because it's an important part of building a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Steve?
Arts and culture makes us who we are, makes you the person you are today. I myself have been on a stage like this 3 different times. I was in the St. Mary's Community Players for the Music Man. We did West Side Story. I was here in London years ago for the Music Box. I find it very unusual to be on stage like this and not singing. Both my sons, my one son plays 7 instruments in the orchestra. He knows what it's like. Culture is what makes us who we are. If you don't have it, you are void. You have something missing. I fully support arts and culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Can you just pass the mic down to Alan there? Thank you.
Okay, I support arts and culture very much. Quick story about some artwork that was done in the city. A friend of mine had a bicycle store and it kept getting tagged. Well, he decided to pick up on some young kids in the neighborhood, and they tagged the back of his store with a beautiful image. And let me tell you, that was never tagged again. The artists in the city are amazing, and we wash them off the walls. I understand washing tags off, but some of this artwork is amazing. The culture, many of you might remember the old thing called Caravana or Cavalcade, I think it was. What a way to learn about all these other cultures in this city. I would love to see that come back to this city so that people could see all the different ethnic races, how they live, how they do stuff. They're dancing. It was amazing. But London has to support this a lot more. And as for Orchestra in London, what Jared said, that would be one of my first things getting back into this city. I think it was a big mistake for the city to drop that. Huge mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Allan.
Well,
Annette?
Not like it used to be.
Sorry, let's let Annette continue. Thank you.
I absolutely support arts and culture as well in the city. I had the good fortune when I was younger to live in Europe, and I think of the Dundas Street Flex, the Flex Street. One of my favorite things in Europe was walking along the cobblestone streets where no cars were allowed, and the street artists who were chalk painting, knowing that the first rain it was all going to be gone, but you would see artists all over just spending their day doing beautiful street art. It's absolutely amazing, and I'm excited to see what happens on Dundas Street here when we do close it off to traffic and when we have our festivals. I also agree strongly with the council's decision to allow music a little bit on the patios. I believe that just helps our downtown and the culture down there, and increasing the amount of time that we're allowed to have the music and the sound going on for our festivals. I think it's all great.
Thank you, Annette. Rod?
Just want to say I'm really disappointed that the Ford government canceled that $500,000, which could have been earmarked for other El Sistema programs in Ontario. Yes, and with all the amount of money that we've done with this Flex Street, I'm working with Sunfest, so hopefully the idea is to actually expand Sunfest into the downtown core. So now that we spent this money on this Flex Street, I want to see it used almost every night that way. Concerts, getting people downtown. Somebody mentioned Skate Canada when I was there. Yeah, it was great when it was going on, but I was at one of the places right next door, and as soon as it was done, all the buses were right there to take the people out of the town. I want to keep them there for concerts afterwards so they can actually see what downtown London is really like.
Thank you, Rod. John?
Thank you. For me, arts and culture is about an experience, and I think sitting here, one of the things that you do see what it means to a community. You have the Aeolian and you have the Palace Theatre, two anchors in East London that really were part of the revitalization of this community. And so I think it means more than just the experience to the community. It can start a rebuild to a community for what it can become. I think we have some great flagships. I think we've got Bud Gardens, we've got the Grand Theatre and the Music Hall, but I also think we need to continue to work on smaller venues for people to work in the city, and we struggle for those venues sometimes. I think we need a long-term plan for Centennial Hall and Reg Cooper Square. I think if you walk through Reg Cooper Square as a Londoner, you're not overly impressed. And I think for Centennial Hall, it's something that we do need a long-term plan for. And I think the last thing, it's part of a councillor's job to be able to bridge private partnerships and bring people together. And I think that's an important piece.
Thanks, John. Kevin?
Neighborhoods serve as the hubs of London's cultural community. I will continue to encourage the London Strengthening Neighborhoods strategy that enables residents and neighborhoods to be able to drive forward projects that improve their neighborhoods. And I also understand that London is a regional city that aims to attract and retain talent and investment. People who live in the surrounding counties can come to London, or they can go to other cities in the region. London must be a vibrant community that people want to be part of so that we do not lose that talent to other communities.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks very much, everyone. Okay, now if they seem well prepared for that question, they may have had a bit of a heads up that there was an arts and culture component potentially. So let's grab a question from the crowd.
Hello, two simple short questions. Do you live in your ward, and how long have you lived in your ward if you have?
Okay, perfect. So we'll be starting this time with David in the back row there. If you can pass a mic down to David. Do you live in your ward, and for how long?
Yes, I live in the ward,
and I've lived here for 8 years, and I love my little home on the river.
Thank you. Jared?
I do reside in my ward, and after coming back for some time working overseas, moved into the ward about 5 years ago.
Thank you. Gil?
No, that was Jared. I'm Gil. Okay. I've lived in this ward, 13, for 15 years. This time, I actually lived here on Palace Street when I went to university decades ago. So I've been around downtown for many, many years, and I definitely live in the ward.
Thank you. Ariel?
I'm a proud new renter in the ward right now downtown. When I came back to London, I lived in my mom's basement with my son as she was helping me get back to my feet, and I was in school. But I'm a proud new renter of downtown in Ward 13 on Richmond Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yes, I do. I live in the ward. I live in North Talbot, and my fiancée and I have had a home here for 6 years.
Thank you. Kevin?
Steve.
Steve, sorry.
Yes, I've lived in the ward. I've lived here for 24 years, and we raised our family here.
Thank you. And we'll start down at the end, sorry, with Allan.
I was born in this ward. I've lived in this ward my entire life, all except for 2 years where we moved just outside the edge of the city, but then we got annexed right back into Ward 14 again. So I've been in this ward my entire life, basically, and played in it, stomped on the ground here, done everything in it, but just never chased by the police in it. So this is my ward, and I love it.
Thank you. Annette?
I live in Summerside in Ward 14. I've been there for almost 10 years.
Thank you. Rod?
Easy question. Been a owner in Ward 13 for just over 3 years now. I'm on the condo board at our apartment complex as well, so I get involved. I'm seriously do not think I'm going to ever move again because I like being downtown and I like the energy and the atmosphere.
Thank you. John?
I live in Ward 13. I live downtown right now. I am relocating to Blackfriars on the 24th of October, 2 days after the election. But I've lived here half my life, come and gone through Ward 13, but I am a resident here now.
Thank you. Kevin?
I live on Talbot Street downtown. I'm a proud resident of Ward 13, and I have been living at my current address for 3 years.
Thank you. And Ben?
I've lived in Ward 13 for 19 years on John Street, and I first moved there out of necessity, and I absolutely love the downtown. I don't like the changes. I'll take this opportunity to go back to culture and invite you out for Culture Days, September 29th, 28th, 29th, and 30th, 188 John, where I'll be showing my art and demonstrating my artwork.
Okay, a little plug in there. Within your ward, so I suppose that works. Okay, we have another question from the audience.
Thank you. The City of London is really a major corporation. It's a multi-million-dollar budgeting exercise. How many people do we have on the stage this evening who have experience with multi-million-dollar budgeting?
Excellent question. Okay, we're going to be starting this time with Jared Zafman. So your experience with multi-million-dollar budgeting.
So I've been fortunate that growing up in a family that did real estate development in London for many, many years, with probably, I think, 2006 being we were the biggest builder in the city. And after university, I went and worked with my dad working on multi-million-dollar real estate development projects, and then working for a couple different municipalities on some of their major projects as well.
Thank you very much, Jared. And Gil?
So, multi-million-dollar budget. Jared's the only one who can say yes to this question because he's on city council. So, yeah, anyway. So it's not just million, it's like 800 million a year just in the operating budget. The city's total assets is in the billions. I haven't done multi-million-dollar budgets, but I've done a lot of work in community economic development, in worker co-ops, in the Unity project. The cash flow on that has been up to $1.5 million per year. We have 20 or 30 employees. I have to balance that budget so that the workers get paid. I've also been an investor in the Solar Share Co-op. So I have a lot of financial experience, and I think that is a very important thing. And I think it just shouldn't be a a person who's run a multi-million-dollar corporation like Google or something. It should be small business people, it should be medium-sized business people, because they have experience as well. There should be people in the not-for-profit area and people in credit unions. I'm a member of 2 credit unions, so
Thank you, Gil.
I do have a lot of financial experience.
Thank you. Ariel?
I have not managed a multi-million-dollar business or anything like that, but last year I was paired with a counselor, Virginia Ridley, and I was a mentee at City Hall, and I learned the processes of voting on budgets, and I think that Virginia Ridley is a very fine counselor, and I'm proud to have been her mentee. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
I think probably what's appropriate is to talk about my financial experience. Within an organization, I've run an information technology budget as part of a large organization. I've been a treasurer on the board of cooperative housing, so I've done a lot of the financial there. As an aside, education-wise, I have an MBA, so I've done a lot of financial and accounting work from that perspective. And many of my clients that I work with, I help them with strategy planning and vision. Some of the largest companies in the world's largest food producer, and there's always a financial element of all the work that we do. So I understand numbers, and I don't feel threatened or worried at all about handling the numbers at City Hall.
Thank you. Steve?
Aside from budgeting for all my businesses that I've held over the years and our family does run festivals here in the city. I was also the assistant to the engineering manager at Beta Brands McCormick's just up the street, where we did multi-year budgeting for all the assembly lines that went through there, also at Veriform in Strathroy. Thank you.
Thank you. Allan?
I can't say I've been a huge budgeter, but I have been one of the spearheaders in our lodge. We budgeted for nearly $1.5 million, where we have to donate to charity and figure out where to put the money and how to reinvest so that we can stay thriving with a small group of people that are actually working the system anymore. So I could say I've been budgeting up with about $1.5 million, but it's been only yearly budgets that we work with.
Thank you. Annette?
I will admit that I have absolutely no experience in this department.
Thank you for your honesty. Rod?
I've run my own business, but it wasn't into the multi-millions. However, I'm on a condo board for London Towers, and we're into $10 to $20 million contracts easily at any point in time. However, I do think a city is much more than a dollar amount, and I really am looking to make sure that the people of London get what they need as well. So it's not about money, it's about the people in my mind.
Thank you. John?
I've run a business for the last 26 years and done budgeting for that. I've sat as treasurer on regional HIV/AIDS for 6 years. I'm treasurer now on the London Downtown Business Association, so I have quite a bit of experience.
Thank you. Kevin?
I am the only councillor running in Ward 13 who has been a municipal councillor before. I have 4 years experience operating multi-million-dollar budgets in the municipality of Huron-East. And I'm able to hit the ground running because I have a knowledge and a foundation of knowledge already in place of how these budgets work.
Thank you. Ben?
I first started working with multi-million-dollar budgets back in 1990 as a student council representative at the University of Western Ontario, where I also had the chance to sit on the Visual Arts Building Committee overseeing a $10 million construction budget. From there, I built a franchise into one of the top leading computer training franchises in the country. As working with the city, developing the cultural master plan, overseeing millions of development dollars going into London's culture. Developing Pride London Festival into a most successful nonprofit, one of the top 3 Pride organizations in the province. And that's just sort of the highlights.
Thank you, Ben. David?
I'm a simple guy. I live within my means. I own my own house, and I'm extremely generous and ambitious in giving of my time to people and causes within my community, and that's what I'm going to council to do.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the candidates for their brevity. I think we can squeeze in one more question. Andrew's got one ready there.
After Election Day, 2 of you will be our representatives on council. At the very least, I'm going to expect you to be competent at what you do and to listen to the advice of people who are expert around you. However, the person I'm going to vote for in Ward 13, where I live, is the person who can do not just be competent, but can inspire me. So can you tell me in 1 or 2 sentences what you're going to do to inspire me after you become councillor?
Ooh, I like this one. Okay, we're going to be starting with Gil. 1 to 2 sentences on how you will inspire Londoners, how you will inspire confidence as a city councillor.
Let's talk about inspiring people and the environment. Londoners need to do their share in solving the environmental crisis that we are facing. We need to use fewer physical resources while at the same time increasing health, education, and wealth. We need to drastically reduce our garbage, protect our land, air, and water, and reforest our city. That was 2. That's 2 sentences. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. Ariel.
Lots of pressure. Personally, I've worked and have served this community. And the only thing I'm going to say to you to inspire you is our city needs to represent the people that live in this city. I want to work together to build a better community, a community that supports one another, a community that, sorry, am I over my
Not counting periods, but you can finish that sentence if you'd like.
My sentence is gone now, but I hope to represent you because I care about community, I care about people, I care about working families, I care about people of all diverse groups and of all different walks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Jonathan, can you do it in 2 sentences?
Thank you for the question. I hope I've inspired you somewhat already, and I've shown you that I've got the courage to make the right decisions and to think visionary about the way that we look at London. But most importantly, I want you to inspire me as well. So I want us to work together. I'm really big on neighborhood associations. I've worked within some really big ones in other cities, and I'd like to work with all the neighborhood associations within our ward and really look at what we can do together and across neighborhood associations. Let's build a better Ward 13 together.
Thank you. Steve?
For years, I have inspired others by leading by example, showing them a better way how to do things for themselves. I myself have helped 218 businesses promote online, teaching them how to use the internet without spending money. I inspire others by showing them how to succeed.
Thank you. Allan?
Well, 2 lines. How I'll inspire people. I'll listen to the constituents in my ward, and I will take their voice to City Hall and make sure it is heard.
Thank you. Annette?
I think I talked about inspiring in my opening statement. I plan to lead by inspiring and empowering people.
Thank you. Rod?
Tough, but I'm going to do it by leading by example as well, by working with neighborhood right now, trying to find ways to reduce crime, and also by trying to keep the student population here in this city. They are our future. We need to keep them here. We can't let them go to Toronto or anywhere else that way.
Thank you. John?
If we want a truly great city, I think we need to put our differences and our pride aside, respect one another, talk with one another, and make the changes that we all truly want to see in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Kevin?
I like to inspire people by leading by example and by also demonstrating my very strong work ethic in that I tend to be very busy as a lawyer. I also participate in my community. I get involved with organizations, and I also am a counselor too.
Thank you. Ben?
While it's not sexy, I think the one thing I can do and can promise each of you is to be your counselor full time. One of the problems I see, one of the challenges I see that is uninspiring is watching counselors who haven't read the minutes, haven't read the notes, are making decisions on other people's wards and other people's lives without having done the research. So yes, while it's not attractive, doing the work, I think, is what's necessary for our community.
Thank you. David?
I think how you inspire people is by finding people who have even greater talent than you might have, and surrounding yourself with good people and working together and getting everyone to pull in the same direction. And if you can do that, then you'll inspire a lot of other people too.
Thank you. And Jared?
It's a great question. And it's made me think, which is always a good thing. Frankly, I think, and I'm hopeful that I can inspire people by being, and what I've tried to do over the last 4 years, which is being an honest and courageous politician who is straightforward and to the point. Frankly, I think that we've seen in the current political climates all over the world, frankly, that we could use quite a bit more of that. And I think that if we do see more of that, I'm hopeful that it will inspire a better political climate and just a better social climate in all of our communities.
Thank you very much, Jared. And I want to thank the audience for really thoughtful, concise questions. I really appreciate that. We've been able to pack a lot of information into this discussion tonight. Unfortunately, we do need to move along now to our closing statements. So I will be inviting the candidates up to the podium to give your closing statement. You will have up to 1 minute, no more. I will have to cut you off very strictly. And we will be starting this time with Ariel Kayabaga. You are next in line from Ward 13.
You've heard a lot from us tonight, but I just want to add that this election is really important because this is the election that's going to determine whether we continue to grow as a strong progressive city that we are. I care about the people who are sleeping on the street tonight. I care about the grandfather who's stuck in his house because he has no access to an underfunded healthcare system. I care about the young woman and the young man who relies on our transit system to get to their first job, and the employers who need their skills to keep their business open. I do promise to listen, to work really hard on the things that matter most to you. My name is Ariel Kayabaga, and I'm very honored and privileged to be your Ward 13 candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. For Ward 13, Jonathan Hughes.
Thank you very much. I dashed in here today because I was teaching young people about leadership. I'm very committed to them, and I'll be very committed to you. When it comes to October 22nd, there's a clear choice. Do you want a councillor who will be in the centre of the political spectrum, who can work with provincial and federal governments? Do you want a councillor who believes in partnerships with business and developers, but will always put you as residents first? Do you want a councillor who's both socially progressive and fiscally responsible? Do you want a councillor that has integrity and professionalism at their core and who will measure success not just on ideas, but on results? I promise to work harder than anyone. I promise to listen more carefully than anyone. And I promise to be your strongest voice so that Ward 13 is well represented. So on October the 22nd, mark Jonathan Hughes as your first choice, and let's move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. For Ward 14, Steve Hillier.
Those of you who know me know I'm a very driven man. And when something upsets me, everyone at City Hall will know that I'm there fighting for Ward 14 and all of London. For years, I've worked behind the scenes helping London citizens, businesses, and neighborhoods, and attended meetings to make our city better. But now it's time for me to put myself out there and help in a much bigger way. Nothing makes me feel better than seeing real-life improvements that I've helped implement. I'm one of you, the real people. We need real people that feel the calling to run for public office, not choose it as a career. Real people that work and have shared in life's problems and created practical solutions. If you've never had to make the hard choices in life, you cannot understand what others have suffered and truly help them. I will personally reach out to our employers and see what they need to grow and expand and help them along with you. Elect me as your Ward 14 City Councillor, and I will be your full-time voice at City Hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. For Ward 14, Allan Tipping.
I have already proven my work. I work hard. I put in thousands of hours on the public liaisons committees. I've been at 99% of my ACE environmental committee meetings with the city. I work hard. I'm action. I'm not words. You want your voice heard? That's my job. Not my job to vote the way I feel. It's my job to vote the way you feel. I will have a website up that you can vote on all major issues, and I will take that voice to City Hall. Not my voice, it will be your voices. I work for you, and I will represent you. Elect me on Ward 14 as a councillor, and you will see I am a strong voice. I will bring your word forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Allan. For Ward 14, Annette Swalwell.
When the federal and provincial governments do not step up to help people in need, we need to take the opportunity to step up as a city. Nobody's life is worth more or less than anyone else's. Children should not go to school hungry, and parents should not have to decide between heating their home, if they have one, and feeding their children. Everyone deserves a roof over their head and food. This should be everyone's priority in our city. It is not acceptable that we have so many people struggling to get by every day. I have a vision that within the 2018 to 22 term, every person who is living in poverty will in some way be positively affected by the new council. Does that sound unbelievable and impossible to do? On October 22nd, you have to decide. Do you want a leader whose only vision for our city is something believable and easy to implement? Or do you want someone who will do everything in their power to make seemingly impossible vision a reality? Change will never happen if we wait for somebody else to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Annette. For Ward 13, Rod Morley.
Since I've been 17, I've been involved in the political process in this country at all levels. I've been involved with many different social groups. I do have a business background, and I would want to use my business acumen to be able to find a way to make London stronger, and I mean all Londoners to be able to be that stronger force to move the city forward. It's important to me to see change happen because I've always seen things always done the same way, and I think now this world is changing so rapidly that we need to start looking at different ways of solving the problems that we have now and in the future. I am that type of person who is always looking to try and solve problems for myself, for my friends, for other groups, for the city, or for the country. That's the type of person I am. I am devoted to doing that, and that's how I live and breathe that.
Thank you, Rod. Also for Ward 13, John Fife Miller.
Thank you for attending tonight's debate. I'll be more than happy to chat with anyone at your convenience if you'd like me to stop by. London has a rich history and a dynamic future. For lifelong Londoners, we understand that. We appreciate the commitment of business in the core and how they embrace the downtown. We revel both at our heritage and our ever-changing landscape that make up our neighborhoods in Ward 13. As a city, we are unique, one of a kind, and that's a good thing. With ranked balloting in the upcoming election, I would humbly ask, should you choose another candidate for your first ballot, I would be honored if you would consider me for your second or third. Simply put, we just need to ensure we never stop trying. As good as our city is, we can always improve on things. Thank you very much for attending tonight's event.
Thank you, John. Kevin Wilbee for Ward 13.
Through my legal education and 4 years' experience as a counselor in Huron East, I have developed the essential skills, experience, and knowledge relevant to being an effective member of council. As a counselor, I will be accessible, open, and transparent. Throughout my term, I will listen and engage in dialogue with residents of London and Ward 13 so as to ensure good decision-making and meaningful results. On October 22nd, I ask for your support. Please vote Kevin Wilbee.
Thank you, Kevin. And Ben Benedict for Ward 13.
Thank you. London is an amazing community that is facing a number of challenges that require a rational voice and someone who's willing to make the sacrifices and do the work full time. Heritage designation, better transit plan, safer streets and housing, green bins, and a strong cultural and employment sector are my focus. Vote Ben Benedict because I care and I want to ensure London continues to do and be better as I have done in the North Talbot community for the past 19 years. In closing, I trust our brief presentation that I've shared with each of you not only my skills, interests, and qualifications, but the passion that has driven me for 28 years to step up and serve our community. I stand before you and ask for your vote and the honor to serve you as your candidate, as your Ward 13 councillor, full time. For ethical, compassionate, and responsible leadership, vote Ben Benedict. Miigwech, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. For Ward 13, David Lundquist.
So tonight, I wanted to thank two special guests that came and watched this debate. One of them is Justin Collins. He's a resident of Simcoe Gardens, and he is London Public Housing's first union leader for a tenants union. We've worked hard since April to galvanize tenants in public housing and to show them that they can be in charge of the places they live. I also want to thank Ron. I want to thank all my other neighbors that have come here tonight. I see a lot of them here. And I want to let you know that the hard work that I've done since April is going to continue today. And if you choose me as councillor, will continue for the next 4 years. Thank you. I'm David Lundquist.
Thank you, David. For Ward 14, Jared Zafman.
Thank you very much for the opportunity tonight. And one thing I just wanted to address quickly is one of the reasons that I got into politics in the first place, and that was frankly my grandparents, who were both Holocaust survivors that came to London and found a place and a community to live that embraced them in a time where they were not embraced in many places in the world. And for me to stand here today as their grandson, I don't think they could, and sadly they didn't make it today, but I don't know if they could have imagined someone like myself, their grandchild, being part of the government of their city. We have so much opportunity in our community, and I've worked incredibly hard for the last 4 years, and I want to, as much as possible, keep doing that, and thank everyone here and in our city for having that opportunity and privilege to have served.
Thank you, Jared. And last but certainly not least, for Ward 13, Gil Warren.
I want to thank you all for coming tonight. The format I wished was a little more flexible. There had been more questions from the audience. I want you to look very carefully at the leaflets you will get at your door from the candidates. And I want you to ask really tough questions of them at the door. In my situation, in my case, I have, I think, the most proven experience and leadership and the biggest proven voice of all the candidates in Ward 13. And I know many, many of the people of Ward 13. I've been an active citizen at London City Hall for decades. I've been involved in many issues. I've spoken many times. I even helped many people get elected to City Council. One of the things I think we need is a discussion on a new local economy. And the final thing I'm going to say is that voter turnout is only 30% in this city. We need all to work together to increase that, and that includes you, the audience, and also the other candidates. If people don't vote, someone else will make the decisions for them. The final problem that we need to all be aware of is the threat in the United States to democracy. And one of the ways we can fight back against Trump and his fascist buddies is to get people to vote. And if we don't, it's going to come here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. I'm afraid that is all the time we have. I'm sure everyone is ready to get home to bed, but I want to, before we go, thank these candidates for having the courage to run. For getting involved in the political process, for having the courage to sit up on stage here to answer our questions, to answer your questions. Thank you so much. Good luck to everyone. I also want to thank you folks for coming out tonight, for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here, and for asking such wonderful questions. We had a really intelligent debate, so I appreciate that so much. Of course, I need to thank the Aeolian for hosting these debates, to Andrew for organizing, and I want to remind you that when the polls close on October 22nd, you can tune into Rogers TV for in-depth analysis of the results. I will be there. Hopefully you will be too. Until then, I'm Christine Teleski. Have a great night. Get home safe.
program is brought to you by Rogers Anyplace TV. Enjoy exclusive content for free. Visit RogersAnyplaceTV.com.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Our informant, film producer Rick Morweather. He's wearing a wire.
Who are those other guys?
Kubrick and Coppola.
You took a 1 and you turned it into a solid 5.
Out of 10.
I'm gonna borrow this.
In my face, abortion's a sin.
You don't seem to mind putting a bullet in someone.
That's the same thing. I don't shoot babies.
The way London votes has changed. You now have the option to rank up to 3 choices for both mayor and ward councillor. Also new, the way a winner is determined and the way we announce the results. Keep up with all the changes at london.ca/elections.
You're watching Rogers TV.